Donald Trump's lawyers made an argument in front of the Supreme Court, well, to the Supreme Court, I guess I should say, on Monday, arguing that they should reverse the appellate court's decision to immediately allow the prosecution in the January 6th trial to continue, and of course asking the court to take up the overall issue of presidential immunity. And in their filing, they made not a legal argument, they made a political argument because these lawyers clearly have no idea what the hell they're doing. His lawyers, probably at his request, told the Supreme Court that, gee whiz, you can't allow him to be prosecuted because he's got to go out there on the campaign trail. And it's just too darn difficult for voters to hear from him if, he's stuck in a courtroom somewhere. That's their argument. That's not a legal argument. Like, there's no case precedent to cite in that. There's no, hey, no, this law doesn't apply here. They're just saying like, hey, you can't prosecute him because the guy's got things to do. He's a very busy man. Let me read this. This is from their filing. The D.C. Circuit's extraordinary decision to return the mandate to the district court to proceed to trial imposes another grave species of irreparable injury. The threat to the First Amendment rights of President Trump, his supporters and volunteers, and all American voters who are entitled to hear from the leading candidate for president at the height of the presidential campaign. The special counsel seeks urgently to force President Trump into a months-long criminal trial at the height of campaign season, effectively sidelining him and preventing him from campaigning against the current president, to whom the special counsel ultimately reports, President Biden. This would impose grave First Amendment injuries on President Trump and all American voters, whether they support him or not, and threatens to tarnish the federal courts with the appearance of partisanship. Again, not a legal argument. Your job as lawyers was to go in a filing to the Supreme Court, because Monday was your deadline, that's when you filed it, and tell them the legal reasons why they should put a stay in place to not allow the trial to continue as they wait for the Supreme Court to even decide whether or not to take up the issue of immunity. Instead, you said, well, he can't talk. He loses his First Amendment if he has to go to court, which is also not even true. So the one legal thing you actually tried to argue is not true. Nobody is taking away Donald Trump's ability to speak. He is still allowed to say whatever the hell he wants to say. He just may not be able to hop on an airplane anytime he chooses to go somewhere different and say it. But that is not actually restricting his freedom of speech because he's still allowed to say what he wants to say. It's restricting his ability to travel to say it, and technically not even restricting it that much because he has his own airplane. He owns it. So even after the trial finishes for that day, he could hop on the plane, he could fly to a different part of the country, do his little speech, hop back on the plane, get back to D.C., and continue the trial the next day, and so on and so forth. So your one legal argument you tried to make is easily refuted by a guy that didn't even go to law school. I can only imagine what Jack Smith and his team are going to say in response to that, because they're actually good, real lawyers, and I'm just a guy who's talking to a camera right now. And even I destroyed your argument. So if this is the best you've got, I would expect the Supreme Court not necessarily to rule against Trump, but probably to stay out of the matter altogether by saying that the appellate court, they made their decision, we're just not going to take up the case. That's the way for the Supreme Court to keep their hands clean in the matter, and of course, allow the trial to continue.